When 8-year-old Trey walks into a diner one night and buys dinner for a group of weary police officers, he has no idea what will happen next. For Trey, this is just a small way to honor his late father's dream of serving others. But the very next day, his world is turned upside down when those same officers show up at his front door, bearing something Trey and his struggling mom never expected. Before we dive into this incredible story, tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, and be sure to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire and uplift. The fluorescent light in apartment 4B flickered stubbornly, casting intermittent shadows across 8-year-old Trey Anderson's face as he carefully arranged his small collection of toy police cars on the worn carpet. Through the thin walls, the familiar sounds of his mother's footsteps echoed as she prepared for another long day of work. "Trey, honey, have you packed your lunch?" Alicia called from their tiny kitchen, her voice carrying the warmth that always seemed to fill their modest home, despite its physical shortcomings. "Yes, Mama," Trey responded, carefully placing his father's old police badge next to his toys. The badge, though just a replica his father James had kept as inspiration while working toward his dream of becoming an officer, was Trey's most prized possession. The apartment was small, with peeling wallpaper and a persistent draft that whistled through the windows during winter storms. But Alicia had done her best to make it feel like home, hanging family photos on the walls and keeping potted plants on every windowsill. In one prominent spot hung a picture of James in his security guard uniform, his proud smile seemingly watching over their little family. "Come on, baby, we need to get moving," Alicia said, emerging from the kitchen. Her uniform for the diner where she worked her first job was freshly pressed, despite its age. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed her exhaustion, but her smile remained bright as she watched her son carefully pack away his toys. "Mama, can you tell me the story about when Daddy first wanted to be a police officer?" Trey asked, a request he made often. Alicia's eyes softened as she sat beside him on their threadbare couch. "Well, your daddy was just about your age when he saw an officer help an elderly woman who had fallen on the sidewalk. The officer didn't just help her up. He walked her all the way home, carrying her groceries, and even came back the next day to check on her. That's when your daddy realized that being a police officer wasn't just about catching bad guys. It was about protecting people and showing kindness." Trey nodded solemnly, having heard the story many times but never tiring of it. "That's what I want to do too, Mama. Help people like Daddy wanted to." "You already do, sweet boy," Alicia said, smoothing his curly hair. "Now come on, Mrs. Johnson next door is waiting for you." The walk to school took them through their neighborhood, a part of town where chain-link fences outnumbered trees and many storefronts remained permanently shuttered. But Trey saw beyond the rough exterior, waving to Mr. Rodriguez, who was sweeping the sidewalk in front of his small grocery store. "Buenos dias, pequeño," Mr. Rodriguez called out, reaching into his apron pocket. "I could use some help with the recycling bins later if you're interested in earning a few dollars." Trey's face lit up. "Yes, sir. I'll come by after school." As they continued walking, Trey spotted Mrs. Chun struggling with her shopping bags. Without hesitation, he ran to help, taking 2 of the lighter bags. "Such a good boy," Mrs. Chun praised, patting his cheek. "Just like your father was." These small interactions were typical of Trey's days. Despite the neighborhood's challenges, he had carved out his own little way of making things better, one small gesture at a time. At school, during recess, Trey often stood by the fence, watching the police cars that occasionally passed by. His best friend Marcus joined him, sharing his lunch as they discussed their future plans. "When I'm a police officer," Trey declared, "I'm going to drive down this street every day and wave to all the kids." "You really think you can be one?" Marcus asked, not unkindly. "My daddy almost was," Trey replied proudly. "He was studying and training really hard before." His voice trailed off, but he quickly brightened. "And now I'm going to do it for both of us." After school, true to his word, Trey helped Mr. Rodriguez with the recycling, carefully sorting bottles and cans. The few dollars he earned went straight into his special box at home, where he saved every penny he could. That evening, as Alicia prepared to leave for her second job at the cleaning service, she found Trey doing his homework at their small kitchen table. "Mrs. Garcia from upstairs will check on you in an hour. Okay? There's dinner in the fridge. Just heat it up when you're hungry." "I can take care of myself, Mama," Trey assured her, trying to sound grown up. "I'm almost 9. Alicia's heart squeezed at his attempt to be brave. She kissed the top of his head, breathing in the scent of his coconut shampoo. I know you can, baby, but Mama still worries. As Alicia headed for the door, Trey called out, "Wait." He ran to his room and returned with a slightly crumpled paper. "I got an A on my math test." "Oh, baby." Alicia's eyes welled up as she hugged him tight. "I'm so proud of you. Your daddy would be too. He always said education was the key to achieving your dreams." After Alicia left, Trey worked on his homework until he heard voices in the hallway. His mother's voice and Mrs. Thompson's from next door. Normally, he wouldn't eavesdrop, but something in his mother's tone made him pause. "I just don't know how much longer I can keep this up, Sarah," Alicia was saying, her voice thick with emotion. "The rent went up again, and with Trey growing so fast, he needs new shoes almost every few months. I'm behind on the electric bill, and they're threatening to cut it off." "You're doing the best you can, Alicia," Mrs. Thompson consoled. "Have you thought about asking for help?" "From who?" "I'm already working 2 jobs. I can't let Trey know how bad things are. He's such a good boy, always trying to help others, just like his father. I don't want him to worry about adult problems." Trey sat quietly at the kitchen table, his homework forgotten. He'd never heard his mother sound so tired, so worried. He thought about the money in his special box, just $12.37, saved from doing odd jobs around the neighborhood. It wasn't much, but maybe. Later that night, lying in bed, Trey made a decision. He had to do something to help, something that would make both his parents proud. His father had always taught him that true strength came from helping others, even when you had little to give. The next day, a weary Officer Michael Daniels sat in his patrol car, watching the city streets through tired eyes. It had been a particularly challenging shift, a domestic dispute that had turned ugly, a lost child, thankfully found, and endless paperwork. His partner, Officer Rodriguez, was equally exhausted. "Want to grab something to eat?" Rodriguez suggested. "That little diner on Mason Street makes decent coffee." Daniels nodded, steering their patrol car toward the diner. "Could use something warm. It's been a long day." The officers entered the diner, joining 2 other cops from their precinct who had had the same idea. The smell of coffee and grilled food filled the air as they slid into a booth, their shoulders sagging with exhaustion. "Rough shift?" Officer Chen asked from the adjacent booth. "Aren't they all lately?" Daniels replied, rubbing his face. "Sometimes I wonder if we're making any difference at all." Just then, the bell above the diner door chimed as Trey entered, clutching a paper bag with his mother's dinner order. His eyes widened at the sight of the officers, and he stood very still, taking in their tired expressions and slumped shoulders. The same diner where his mother worked her morning shift was now filled with real police officers. Heroes, just like his father wanted to be. In that moment, looking at the weary officers who spent their days protecting people, just like his father had wanted to do, Trey made a decision that would change not only his life but the lives of everyone around him. Standing by the counter of Mason Street Diner, Trey's small hand trembled as he reached into his pocket. The crumpled bills, his entire savings of $12.37, felt heavy with responsibility. He glanced back at the 4 police officers, their exhausted faces illuminated by the diner's warm lighting, then down at his money. "What if it's not enough?" he whispered to himself, his heart racing. The aroma of coffee and grilled burgers filled the air as he watched the officers browse their menus. Through the kitchen window, he could see Ms. Ruby, the kind-hearted cashier who always snuck him extra fries during his mother's shifts. Taking a deep breath, Trey approached the counter, standing on his tiptoes to see over it properly. "Ms. Ruby," he called softly. Ruby turned, her warm smile spreading across her face as she recognized him. "Well, if it isn't my favorite customer. Here to pick up your mama's dinner." "Yes, ma'am." Trey nodded, then hesitated. "But I was wondering something else too." Ruby leaned forward, her gold earrings catching the light. "What's on your mind, sugar?" Trey's voice dropped to a whisper as he placed his wadded bills on the counter. "How much would it cost to buy dinner for those police officers over there?" Ruby's eyes softened as she glanced at the money, then at the officers. She quickly calculated their typical orders in her head, around $30 worth of food. Looking back at Trey's hopeful face and his small pile of savings, she made a decision. "Well, let me see what we've got here," she said, carefully smoothing out each bill and counting the change. You know what? This is just enough to cover their meals. Trey's face lit up. Really? All of it? Ruby nodded, discreetly pushing his money aside and reaching for her own wallet under the counter. You just leave it to me, sugar. I'll make sure they're taken care of. Thank you, Ms. Ruby. Trey beamed. Then his expression grew serious. But please don't tell them it was me until they're done eating. I want it to be a surprise. Ruby pressed a hand to her heart, touched by his earnestness. Cross my heart, baby. Now, why don't you take your mama's dinner and wait at the counter? You can watch their reaction when I tell them. As Trey settled onto a counter stool, Ruby approached the officer's table. Officer Daniels looked up from his menu, offering a tired smile. What can I get you folks tonight? Ruby asked, pulling out her notepad. Coffee, black, and the classic burger for me, Daniels replied. The other officers placed similar orders. Officer Rodriguez choosing the chicken sandwich, Officer Chin going for the meatloaf special, and Officer Thompson requesting the daily soup and sandwich combo. Ruby jotted down their orders, then headed back to the kitchen, giving Trey a conspiratorial wink as she passed. The boy sat quietly, his legs swinging beneath the counter stool, occasionally stealing glances at the officers while they talked in low voices about their day. 20 minutes later, as the officers finished their meals and Rodriguez reached for his wallet, Ruby approached their table again. No need for that, officers. Your meals have already been taken care of. What do you mean? Officer Chin asked, surprised. By whom? Ruby smiled and gestured toward the counter. That young gentleman over there had something he wanted to tell you. All four officers turned to look at Trey, who suddenly felt very small under their gaze. His heart hammering in his chest, he slid off the stool and walked over to their table, his hands clasped behind his back. I bought your dinner, he said softly, looking up at them with a mixture of nervousness and determination. Because you look tired, and my daddy always said police officers work really hard to keep everyone safe. Officer Daniels leaned forward, his fatigue momentarily forgotten. That's very kind of you, son, but we can't accept Dash. Please. Trey interrupted, then quickly added, sir. Please accept it. My daddy, he wanted to be a police officer too. Before he passed away. This is like helping him help you. The officers exchanged glances, moved by the boy's sincerity and the tremor in his voice when he mentioned his father. What's your name, son? Officer Daniels asked gently. Trey Anderson, sir. James Anderson was my daddy. Recognition flickered across Officer Thompson's face. James Anderson. I remember him. He was in the academy training program about 3 years ago, wasn't he? Before the accident. Trey nodded, his eyes brightening. You knew my daddy? Why don't you sit down with us, Trey? Officer Daniels suggested, sliding over to make room. We'd love to hear more about your father. Trey carefully climbed into the booth, sitting up straight like his mother had taught him. The officer's uniform seemed to shine under the diner lights, their badges gleaming like stars. Your father was in my training class, Officer Thompson shared, her voice warm with memory. He was always first to volunteer to help others. Had the biggest smile I'd ever seen. That's what Mama says too. Trey exclaimed. She says his smile could light up the whole room. She's right about that, Thompson agreed. He talked about you all the time during training. Showed us pictures every chance he got. Officer Daniels leaned forward, his elbows on the table. So, Trey, what made you decide to buy our dinner tonight? Trey's fingers traced patterns on the tabletop as he gathered his thoughts. Well, you all look so tired. And I remember Daddy saying that being a police officer is really hard work, but really important too. He said sometimes people forget to say thank you to officers for keeping them safe. That's very thoughtful of you, Officer Rodriguez said, his own fatigue evident in his voice. It's been a long day, and this means more than you know. Want to hear about some of the good things we did today? Officer Chin asked, noting Trey's fascinated expression. Trey nodded eagerly, scooting forward in his seat. Well, Chin began, this morning we helped find a lost dog and reunited him with his family. You should have seen how happy the little girl was when she got her puppy back. Really? Trey's eyes widened. Was it a big dog? Tiny little thing, Chin laughed, holding her hands about a foot apart. But with the biggest ears you've ever seen. Officer Daniels joined in, sharing a story about helping an elderly man change his tire in the rain. As they talked, The weariness seemed to lift from their faces, replaced by genuine warmth as they watched Trey's reactions to their stories. You know what's funny? Officer Rodriguez added, sometimes the smallest things make the biggest difference. Like today, we were all pretty tired and a bit discouraged, but then you come along with this amazing gesture of kindness, and suddenly everything feels better. Trey beamed with pride, but then his expression grew serious. Can I tell you a secret? He asked, looking around the table. The officers leaned in closer, matching his serious tone. Of course, Daniels assured him. I used all my savings to buy your dinner, Trey admitted. It wasn't much, but Mama always says it's not about how much you give, it's about giving what you can. The officers exchanged glances, deeply moved by the boy's sacrifice. Officer Daniels felt a lump form in his throat as he thought about his own son at home, about the inherent goodness children could show when given the chance. Your mother sounds like a very wise woman, Officer Thompson said softly. Is she working tonight? Trey nodded. She works here in the morning, and then at the cleaning service at night. She works really hard. He paused, remembering the conversation he'd overheard, but knew better than to share his mother's private struggles. You know what, Trey? Officer Daniels said, reaching for his wallet and pulling out a business card. We want you to have this. It has my direct number on it. If you or your mother ever need anything at all, you call us, okay? We take care of our own, and as far as we're concerned, your family now. Trey handled the card as if it were made of gold, carefully tucking it into his pocket. Really? Like a police family? Exactly like that, Rodriguez confirmed. And we look out for each other. Speaking of family, Officer Chen added, it's getting late. Would you like us to walk you home? Make sure you get there safely. Trey's face lit up at the offer, but then he glanced at the clock and shook his head reluctantly. Thank you, but I'd better run. Mama will be worried if I'm late, and I still have to deliver her dinner. As Trey gathered his things and prepared to leave, each officer took turns shaking his hand, treating him with the same respect they'd show any adult. Officer Daniels knelt down to meet Trey's eyes. Thank you, Trey, he said earnestly. Not just for the dinner, but for reminding us why we do this job. Your father would be incredibly proud of you. Trey's eyes glistened as he nodded, too moved to speak. As he headed toward the door, Ruby called out from behind the counter, You're a good boy, Trey Anderson. The officers watched through the diner window as Trey made his way down the street, his small figure standing tall and proud under the streetlights. They noticed how he paused to help an elderly woman with her shopping bags, just as they'd seen James do during his training days. You know, Officer Thompson said quietly, we really need to do something for that family. Officer Daniels nodded, already forming a plan. Yes, we do. And I know exactly where to start. As Trey walked home that night, clutching his mother's dinner in one hand and feeling the business card in his pocket with the other, he felt lighter than air. The stories the officers had shared played through his mind, making him feel closer to his father's dream than ever before. The streetlights cast long shadows as he walked, but for the first time, they didn't seem scary at all. Instead, they reminded him of the officers' badges, gleaming in the diner's light, symbols of protection and hope. He couldn't wait to tell his mother about his evening, though he decided to keep Officer Daniels' card a secret for now. It felt like a special treasure, a connection to both his father's memory and his own future. The streetlight outside apartment 4B cast long shadows through the window as Trey burst through the door, still buzzing with excitement from his evening at the diner. The familiar scent of his mother's lavender air freshener, mixed with the mustiness of their aging building, welcomed him home. Mama, you won't believe what happened, he called out, his voice echoing through their small apartment. Alicia emerged from the bathroom, still in her cleaning service uniform, her hands red from scrubbing floors. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, but she managed a warm smile for her son. Baby, what's got you so excited? And where have you been? I was starting to worry. I'm sorry I'm late, Mama. Trey apologized, setting her now cold dinner on their small kitchen table. But something amazing happened at the diner. There were real police officers there, just like Daddy wanted to be. Alicia sank into one of their mismatched kitchen chairs, her exhaustion evident in every movement. Tell me all about it while I eat, baby. Trey bounced on his toes as he recounted the evening's events, his words tumbling out in rapid succession. And Officer Thompson knew Daddy from the academy. She said he had the biggest smile and always helped people, just like you always tell me. Alicia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Thompson? Sarah Thompson? Yes. She remembered Daddy. And Officer Daniels told us about helping an old man change his tire. And Officer Chin found a lost puppy today. And Trey's excited rambling continued until he noticed his mother's expression shift as he mentioned paying for their meals. Trey, Alicia interrupted gently, setting down her fork. How did you pay for their dinner? The boy's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. I used my savings. The money I earned helping Mr. Rodriguez and Mrs. Chun. Baby. Alicia's voice wavered. That was your money for new school supplies. We talked about this, about being responsible with our money right now. But Mama, they look so tired, Trey protested, his lower lip trembling slightly. And Daddy always said we should help the people who help others. Alicia reached across the table to take her son's hand. Your heart is in the right place, baby, just like your father's was. But we need to be careful right now. Times are hard. And she caught herself, remembering her promise to shield Trey from their financial struggles. But the unpaid bills stacked on her bedside table flashed through her mind. The past due notices, the final warnings, the increasing rent. I'm sorry, Mama, Trey whispered, his earlier joy deflating like a punctured balloon. I didn't mean to make things harder. Oh, baby, no. Alicia pulled him into a tight hug, breathing in his familiar scent. You didn't make things harder. You just have such a big heart, like your daddy. But sometimes we need to think about tomorrow, too. You understand? Trey nodded against her shoulder, but the weight of guilt had already settled in his stomach. Later that night, as he lay in his narrow bed, he could hear his mother moving quietly around the apartment, probably paying bills or sorting through paperwork like she often did late at night when she thought he was asleep. Rolling onto his side, Trey's eyes fell on the photo of his father that sat on his bedside table. James Anderson's warm smile beamed back at him, frozen in time at his academy graduation ceremony. Did I do the right thing, Daddy? Trey whispered to the photograph. I wanted to make you proud, but I don't want Mama to worry more. In her own room, Alicia sat on the edge of her bed, holding her own copy of James's photograph. The memories flooded back, as vivid as if they'd happened yesterday instead of 3 years ago. She remembered the day James announced he was leaving his security job to pursue his dream of becoming a police officer. They'd sat at this very kitchen table, planning how to make it work financially while he attended the academy. We'll be tight for a while, he'd said, his eyes shining with determination. But think of the example we'll set for Trey, showing him that it's never too late to chase your dreams, to help others. Then came the accident, a rainy night, a drunk driver, and suddenly she was a widow with a 5-year-old son and a mountain of medical bills. The insurance money hadn't lasted long, and pride had prevented her from accepting help from James's academy friends. Alicia wiped away a tear as she remembered the day she'd taken the second job at the cleaning service. Trey had been so brave, promising to be good for the neighbors who watched him, never complaining about the long hours she was gone. I don't know if I'm doing right by him, James, she whispered to the photograph. He's got your heart, your spirit of giving. But I'm so scared. One emergency, one unexpected bill, and we could lose everything. The sound of soft footsteps interrupted her thoughts. She quickly wiped her eyes as Trey appeared in her doorway, clutching his stuffed police dog. Mama, can I sleep with you tonight? Of course, baby. Alicia patted the bed beside her. As Trey snuggled close, she could feel the slight tremor in his body that told her he was crying. I'm sorry about the money, Mama, he whispered. I can ask Mr. Rodriguez for more recycling work tomorrow. Maybe Mrs. Chun needs help with her garden again. Alicia's heart squeezed painfully. Her 8-year-old son shouldn't be worried about earning money. She stroked his curly hair, remembering how James used to do the same thing when Trey was a baby. Listen to me, Trey Anderson, she said softly but firmly. What you did tonight, helping those officers, showing kindness to strangers, that's exactly what your daddy would have done. And you know what? That's worth more than any amount of money. Really? Trey lifted his head, his eyes shining with tears in the dim light. Really? Alicia wiped his cheeks with her thumb. Your daddy always said that kindness creates ripples, like throwing a stone in a pond. You never know how far those ripples will spread, or whose life they might touch. As they lay there in the darkness, Alicia continued to stroke Trey's hair, humming the lullaby she'd sung to him since he was a baby. She felt him gradually relax, his breathing becoming slow and steady. "Mama," he murmured, half asleep. "Yes, baby." Officer Daniels said they helped take care of their own, and that we're like family now. Do you think he meant it? Alicia's hand paused for a moment, then resumed its gentle motion. "I'm sure he did, baby. Your daddy always said police officers stick together." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the worn curtains as Alicia prepared breakfast. She called in sick to the diner, knowing she needed this morning with her son. The lost wages would hurt, but some things were more important. Trey sat at the kitchen table, watching her make his favorite chocolate chip pancakes, a rare treat they usually reserve for special occasions. "Mama," he asked, helping her mix the batter, "are you still mad about what I did?" Alicia set down the whisk and turned to face her son. "I was never mad, baby. Worried, yes, because that's what mothers do, but never mad. In fact," she reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "I want to show you something." Inside was a worn photograph she'd never shown him before. It showed James in his security guard uniform, handing a brown paper bag to a homeless man outside the bank where he worked. "Your daddy took his lunch to work every day to save money," Alicia explained. "But twice a week, he'd pack extra sandwiches. Said he couldn't eat knowing others were hungry. The bank manager told him to stop, said it wasn't good for business. You know what your daddy did?" Trey shook his head, absorbed in the story. "He started arriving early, before his shift, to give out those sandwiches. Said some rules are meant to be bent when kindness is on the line." Alicia smiled at the memory. "That's the kind of man your father was, and that's the kind of boy you're becoming. But what about the money?" Trey asked quietly. "I heard you talking to Mrs. Thompson about the bills." Alicia's heart sank, realizing he'd overheard more than she'd thought. She sat down beside him, taking his small hands in hers. "Money comes and goes, baby. But kindness? That stays forever. It grows, spreads, comes back to you in ways you never expect. Your daddy taught me that, and now you're teaching me too." Trey's face brightened. "Like the ripples in the pond?" "Exactly like that." Alicia kissed his forehead. "Now, how about we finish these pancakes? Then maybe we can walk by the station, and you can wave to your new friends." As they moved around their small kitchen together, Alicia watched her son's renewed confidence. He chatted about the officer's stories, his eyes shining with the same light she'd seen in James's when he talked about helping others. The morning passed quickly, filled with laughter and stories about James that Alicia hadn't felt strong enough to share before. She realized that in trying to protect Trey from their struggles, she'd also been holding back some of the joy, the memories that made their family who they were. Neither of them knew it yet, but outside their door, those ripples were about to come back to them in a wave of unexpected blessing. Officer Daniels and his team had spent their evening making calls, pulling strings, and setting in motion a plan that would change everything. They were just about to head out when someone knocked on their door. The knock on the door echoed through apartment 4B like a thunderclap, startling both Trey and Alicia as they finished cleaning up from breakfast. The morning sunlight streaming through their worn curtains caught the dust motes dancing in the air, frozen for a moment by the unexpected sound. Trey, still in his Superman pajamas, was closest to the door. He stood on his tiptoes to peek through the peephole, then gasped with delight. "Mama, it's Officer Daniels, and Officer Thompson, and Officer Chun, and Officer Rodriguez too." Alicia's heart skipped a beat, her hand flying to her throat. In her experience, police officers at your door early in the morning rarely brought good news. "Are you sure, baby?" Step back from the door. "But Mama, they're my friends from the diner." Trey bounced excitedly. "Can I open it? Please?" Alicia hesitated, her mind racing through possibilities. Had something happened in the neighborhood? Was there trouble? She hadn't done anything wrong, but years of struggling had taught her to be cautious. Another gentle knock, followed by Officer Daniels' warm voice. "Mrs. Anderson? It's Officer Michael Daniels from the 12th Precinct. We met your son Trey last night at Mason Street Diner." Trey looked at his mother with pleading eyes. "See? It's really them. Officer Daniels told me all about helping change a tire in the rain, and Officer Chin found a lost puppy with big ears." Despite her anxiety, Alicia couldn't help but smile at her son's enthusiasm. She quickly ran her fingers through her hair, straightened her worn but clean house dress, and moved toward the door. Okay, baby, but let me open it. The moment she turned the lock, Trey could barely contain himself. As the door swung open, they were greeted by the sight of 4 police officers in full uniform, their badges gleaming in the morning light. Officer Daniels stood at the front, his kind face breaking into a warm smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Anderson," he said softly, noting her nervous expression. "I hope we're not interrupting anything." "Officer Daniels," Trey burst out, ducking under his mother's protective arm. "You really came? Did you find any more lost puppies today?" Officer Chen laughed, kneeling down to Trey's level. "Not yet, but the day's still young." Alicia's hands twisted the hem of her dress. Is everything all right? Has something happened?" "Everything's fine, Mrs. Anderson." Officer Thompson stepped forward, her presence somehow both professional and comforting. "We actually came because your son made quite an impression on us last night, and we wanted to properly thank him." "Oh," Alicia relaxed slightly, but confusion still clouded her features. "You didn't have to do that. Trey knows he shouldn't have spent his savings, and I apologize if Dash." "Mrs. Anderson," Officer Daniels interrupted gently. "May we come in? We have something we'd like to discuss with you both." Trey was practically vibrating with excitement. "Can they, Mama? Please? I want to show Officer Chan my police car collection." Looking at her son's joyful face and the genuine warmth in the officer's eyes, Alicia felt her anxiety begin to fade. "Of course, please come in. I apologize for the—" She gestured vaguely at their modest surroundings. "No apologies needed," Officer Rodriguez said warmly as they entered. "And something smells amazing in here. Mama made chocolate chip pancakes," Trey announced proudly. "She says they're for special occasions, and today is special because he caught himself, remembering their morning conversation about James." Officer Thompson smiled knowingly. "Because kindness deserves to be celebrated?" "Yeah." Trey beamed, then turned to Officer Chun. "Want to see my police cars? Daddy gave me the first one, and now I have 6. "In a minute, buddy," Officer Daniels said, placing a gentle hand on Trey's shoulder. "First, we'd like to talk to you and your mom about something important." They gathered in the small living room, the officers politely declining Alicia's nervous offer of coffee. Trey settled next to his mother on their worn couch, while the officers arranged themselves around the room. "Mrs. Anderson," Officer Daniels began, "your son did something remarkable last night. In all my years on the force, I've never been so moved by a simple act of kindness." "Please call me Alicia," she said softly, pulling Trey close to her side. "Alicia," Daniels nodded. "What Trey did, it wasn't just about buying dinner. It was about reminding us why we do this job. Your late husband, James, he was known at the academy for that same kind of spirit." Officer Thompson stepped forward, reaching into her uniform pocket. "When we returned to the precinct last night, we shared Trey's story. It spread quickly, and well, she pulled out an envelope. Our entire shift wanted to be part of this." Alicia's hands trembled as she accepted the envelope. "Part of what?" "Open it, Mama," Trey urged, curiosity burning in his eyes. Inside the envelope, Alicia found a stack of bills and a handwritten note. As she read it, tears began to roll down her cheeks. "We took up a collection," Officer Rodriguez explained gently. "Every officer on our shift contributed. Some of them knew James. Others were just moved by Trey's story. We wanted to help make things a little easier for you both." I can't accept this," Alicia whispered, trying to hand the envelope back. "Yes, you can," Officer Chen said firmly. "Because this isn't charity, Alicia. This is family helping family. James was one of us, which makes you and Trey one of us too. And that's not all." Officer Daniels nodded to his colleagues, who disappeared briefly into the hallway. They returned carrying bags of groceries, household supplies, and a wrapped package that made Trey's eyes widen. "We noticed some things last night," Thompson said carefully, "about the struggles you've been facing. We want you to know you're not alone. The precinct has resources, programs that can help with job training, childcare, whatever you need." As the officers began unpacking the bags, revealing fresh fruits, vegetables, meats, and pantry staples, Alicia's composure finally broke. Years of holding it together, of being strong for Trey, of refusing help out of pride, it all came crashing down. I've been trying so hard, she sobbed, working 2 jobs, stretching every dollar. But it never seems to be enough. The rent keeps going up and Trey's growing so fast, and I just want to give him the life James dreamed of for him. Officer Thompson sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. You've done an amazing job, Alicia. James would be so proud of how you've raised Trey. Let us help you now, the way James would have wanted us to. Meanwhile, Officer Chun had helped Trey open the wrapped package, revealing a brand new police uniform costume, complete with a toy badge that looked just like the real thing. Trey's eyes shone with wonder as he held it up. Really? For me? Try it on, buddy, Officer Rodriguez encouraged with a grin. Every future officer needs a uniform to practice in. As Trey rushed to his room to change, Officer Daniels knelt before Alicia. There's something else. We've spoken to the precinct about starting a scholarship fund in James's name for children who dream of following in their parents' footsteps in law enforcement. Trey would be the first recipient. Alicia's hand flew to her mouth. But that's too much. It's not enough, Daniels corrected gently. James gave his life trying to make this community better. The least we can do is help his son follow that dream. Trey burst back into the room in his new uniform, chest puffed out proudly. Look, Mama, I look just like Daddy in his academy picture. The sight of her son, beaming in his uniform, looking so much like James, broke something open in Alicia's heart. All the walls she'd built, all the help she'd refused, all the burdens she'd carried alone, they crumbled in the face of this overwhelming kindness. Thank you, she whispered, looking at each officer in turn. Thank you for remembering him, for helping us. Mama, why are you crying? Trey asked worriedly, running to her side. These are happy tears, baby, she assured him, pulling him close. Sometimes when your heart is too full of joy, it spills out through your eyes. Officer Chun produced one final surprise from her pocket. A real police badge, worn smooth with age. This was your father's training badge, she explained to Trey. We found it in the academy archives. We thought you should have it. Trey took the badge with trembling hands, his fingers tracing the numbers reverently. Daddy touched this? He wore it every day, Thompson confirmed. And now it's yours, to remind you that you're part of our family. As the morning continued, the small apartment filled with conversation and laughter. The officers shared more stories about James, painting a picture of the man he was during his brief time at the academy. Trey showed off his police car collection, and Officer Chun made each car's siren sound, much to his delight. Alicia moved around the kitchen, putting away the groceries with Officer Thompson's help, occasionally pausing to wipe away fresh tears of gratitude. For the first time in years, she felt the weight lifting from her shoulders, replaced by hope and the warmth of community. You know, Officer Daniels said quietly to Trey as they arranged his new uniform on a hanger, your dad used to say that being a police officer wasn't just about enforcing laws. It was about building bridges, creating connections, making people feel safe and cared for. Trey nodded solemnly. Like the ripples in the pond? Exactly like that, Daniel smiled, surprised. Where did you hear about ripples? Mama told me. She said kindness makes ripples that spread out and touch other people's lives. Like when I bought your dinner, and now you're helping us. Officer Daniels felt his throat tighten with emotion. Your daddy would be so proud of you, Trey. You're already showing the heart of a true officer. As the morning drew to a close and the officers prepared to leave, Trey stood in his new uniform, offering each one a proper salute that Officer Rodriguez had taught him. They returned his salute with equal seriousness, honoring the future officer they saw in him. Remember, Officer Daniels said at the door, your family now. Both of you. Don't hesitate to call if you need anything. Alicia nodded, too overwhelmed for words, holding the envelope that represented not just financial help, but hope for a better future. After the officers left, Trey turned to his mother, his eyes shining. Mama, did you see? They said we're family, just like Daddy's family. Alicia pulled her son close, breathing in the moment. Through her tears, she could almost see James smiling down at them, his dream living on in their son's heart and in the kindness of his fellow officers. The morning sun streamed through their windows, catching Trey's new badge and making it shine. In that light, mother and son stood together, wrapped in the warmth of unexpected blessing, their hearts full of gratitude for the ripples of kindness that had come back to embrace them. True to their word, the officers became regular fixtures in Trey and Alicia's lives. Officer Thompson would stop by on her way to work, often bringing coffee for Alicia and helping Trey with his homework. Officer Rodriguez taught Trey basic Spanish during his visits, saying every good police officer should be able to communicate with all members of their community. One particularly memorable evening, Officer Daniels arrived in his patrol car just as Alicia was leaving for her cleaning job. "Actually," he said with a smile, "you might want to hold off on that. We have a surprise for you both." Before Alicia could question him, more patrol cars pulled up outside their building. Officers poured out, carrying bags of food and drinks. "What's all this?" Alicia asked, amazed. "Well," Officer Chen explained, "we heard it was someone's birthday tomorrow." She winked at Trey, who gasped in surprise. "You remembered?" "Of course we did, buddy," Officer Daniels laughed. 9 years old is a big deal, and your mom deserves a night off to celebrate with you." The small apartment filled with laughter and conversation as officers and neighbors alike joined the impromptu celebration. Trey, wearing his police uniform, which he now insisted on wearing every chance he got, proudly showed off the police procedures he'd been learning from his regular visitors. "Forward march," he commanded, demonstrating the proper way to walk on patrol that Officer Rodriguez had taught him. "And when we see someone who needs help, we say, 'How may I assist you today, citizen?'" The adults chuckled at his serious expression, but there was genuine pride in their laughter. They could all see the future officer emerging in this kind-hearted boy. Later that evening, as Trey sat surrounded by his new extended family, Officer Daniels presented him with another surprise, a Junior Police Academy application. "It's for next summer," he explained as Trey's eyes grew wide with excitement. "Weekly classes where you'll learn about what police officers do, basic safety procedures, and how to help your community. Your dad would have loved to see you in this program." Trey clutched the application to his chest, tears welling in his eyes. "I'm going to make him proud," he whispered. "I'm going to be just like him." "Baby," Alicia said softly, kneeling beside her son, "you already make him proud. Every single day." The following weeks saw even more changes in their lives. Officer Thompson helped Alicia find a better-paying job with more regular hours, allowing her to quit the cleaning service. Officer Chen's husband, an education administrator, helped arrange a scholarship for Trey at a better school closer to the police station. But perhaps the most significant change was in Trey himself. He walked taller now, more confident, but also more aware of his responsibility to others. At his new school, he started a kindness club, inspired by his experience with the officers. "Everyone can do something to help," he explained to his classmates. "Even if you think it's too small to matter, it does. Because kindness makes ripples, and ripples can change everything." One evening, as Alicia watched Trey doing his homework at the kitchen table, now wearing reading glasses that Officer Rodriguez's wife, an optometrist, had helped them obtain, she felt tears of pride well up in her eyes. "James," she whispered to herself, "you should see our boy. He's becoming everything you dreamed he would be, and more." Trey looked up from his work, catching his mother's emotional expression. "Are you okay, Mama?" "I'm more than okay, baby," she smiled, moving to hug him. "I'm just so proud of you. You know that, right?" Trey nodded against her shoulder. "I'm proud of you too, Mama. And I think Daddy is proud of both of us." The sound of a police siren outside drew their attention to the window. Officer Daniels was pulling up for his regular evening check-in, and Trey rushed to get his uniform on, now a nightly ritual. Alicia watched as her son transformed into a miniature officer, his face glowing with purpose and joy. She thought about the morning that had changed their lives, when Trey's simple act of kindness had opened the door to so much more. The ripples of that kindness continued to spread through their community. The precinct scholarship program, inspired by Trey's story, had already helped 3 other children of fallen officers. The Neighborhood Watch program had brought people together, creating a safer, more connected community. And at the center of it all was Trey, her beautiful boy with his father's heart and his own unique spirit of giving. Every day, he found new ways to help others, whether it was teaching younger kids about safety rules he'd learned from the officers or helping elderly neighbors with their groceries. "You know what Officer Daniels told me today?" Trey asked as he adjusted his toy badge in the mirror. He said that being a police officer isn't just about wearing a uniform or carrying a badge. It's about being there for people, making them feel safe and cared for. That sounds exactly like something your daddy would say. Alicia smiled. And you know what else? Trey continued, his eyes shining. He said that some people are born to be officers, that it's in their hearts before they ever put on the uniform. He said I'm like that, just like Daddy was. The pride in his voice, the way he stood a little straighter in his uniform, the genuine desire to help others. It all reminded Alicia so much of James that her heart ached with joy rather than sadness for the first time in years. A knock at the door signaled Officer Daniels' arrival, and as Trey rushed to answer it, Alicia said a silent prayer of gratitude, grateful for her son's generous heart, for the unexpected family they'd found in the police force, and for the way tragedy had transformed into blessing through the simple power of kindness. The ripples continued to spread, touching lives in ways they might never know. But in their small apartment, now filled with love and hope and the sound of laughter, Alicia knew that this was just the beginning of their story. As she watched Trey demonstrate his newest police procedure to an attentive Officer Daniels, she could almost feel James's presence, his pride in their son, his joy at seeing his legacy lived out in such a beautiful way. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise, all because a little boy with a big heart had decided to spend his savings on dinner for some tired police officers. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could create the biggest changes, that love and generosity could bridge any gap, heal any wound, and create family out of strangers. In that moment, surrounded by the evidence of how much their lives had changed, Alicia finally understood what James had always said about the power of small acts of kindness. They really were like ripples in a pond, spreading outward in ever-widening circles, touching lives in ways you might never expect, creating connections that could last a lifetime. And in her son's bright eyes and generous spirit, she saw those ripples continuing to spread, promising a future filled with the kind of change that only comes from a heart opened wide to others, just like his father's had been. 20 years later, Officer Trey Anderson adjusted his badge in the rearview mirror of his patrol car, a habit he'd developed over his 5 years on the force. The badge, newly promoted to detective, gleamed in the morning sun, but it wasn't the only badge he carried. In his breast pocket, close to his heart, rested his father's old training badge, worn smooth with age and 2 decades of being his lucky charm. Looking sharp, Detective called a familiar voice. Officer Michael Daniels, now Police Captain Daniels, his hair more silver than brown, approached with the same warm smile that had changed Trey's life 20 years ago. Thanks, Cap, Trey grinned, stepping out of his car. Still feels strange hearing detective instead of officer. You earned it. Daniels clapped him on the shoulder. Youngest detective in precinct history. Your father would be proud. They stood outside the Mason Street Diner, now renovated but still serving the best coffee in the neighborhood. Ms. Ruby's daughter ran it now, but the old photos on the wall remained, including one of an 8-year-old Trey in his toy police uniform, surrounded by officers. Hard to believe it's been 20 years. Trey mused, touching his father's badge through his shirt. Sometimes I still expect to walk in and see Ms. Ruby behind the counter. Speaking of walking in, Daniels checked his watch. Aren't you running late for your special appointment? Trey's face lit up. Not late. Perfectly timed. Some moments deserve a dramatic entrance. Inside the diner, Alicia Anderson sat in their usual booth, her hair now streaked with elegant strands of gray. Beside her sat her daughter-in-law, Sarah, Trey's wife, who worked as a social worker at the precinct's Family Services Division. They were both trying to hide their grins from the young boy sitting across from them, fidgeting in his seat. When's he coming? 8-year-old James Anderson Jr. asked for the 100th time, adjusting his own toy police uniform, a perfect replica of the one his father had worn at his age. Patience, baby, Alicia smiled, sharing a knowing look with Sarah. Your daddy's got a surprise for you. The bell above the door chimed, and little James's head whipped around. There stood his father, but not in his usual patrol uniform. Instead, Trey wore the sharp suit and badge of a detective, and beside him stood Captain Daniels and several other officers, some retired, some still serving, who had been part of the Anderson family's story for the past 20 years. Daddy, James launched himself from the booth, then stopped short, noticing the new badge. Wait, is that? That's right, buddy. Trey knelt down to his son's level, just as Officer Daniels had done for him so many years ago. Your old man's a detective now. And you know what that means? James's eyes widened. I get to come to career day at school and tell everyone my daddy's a detective? The adults laughed, but there were tears in Alicia's eyes as she watched her son with her grandson. The same kind heart, the same devotion to helping others. James Jr. was his father's son in every way that mattered. That's right, Trey confirmed, but that's not all. Captain Daniels and I have been talking, and we think it's time for you to join the Junior Police Academy. You'll be the youngest member ever. James's jaw dropped. Really? Just like you were. Just like your daddy. Captain Daniels stepped forward, and just like your grandpa James would have been. We've got a legacy to uphold, after all. As they settled into the booth, now needing to accommodate their extended family of officers and loved ones, Trey caught his mother's eye. They both knew what day it was. The anniversary of that first dinner he'd bought for 4 tired officers. The small act of kindness that had changed everything. You know what, son? Trey said to James as Ruby's daughter served them coffee and hot chocolate. Let me tell you a story about ripples in a pond, and how sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change not just one life, but generations to come. The morning sun streamed through the diner windows, catching the badges, old and new, toy and real, that represented not just a family's legacy, but the enduring power of a child's pure heart and the ripples of kindness that continue to spread, touching lives in ways that prove magic is real, and it lives in the simple act of caring for others. Thank you for watching Trey's story. If you were touched by his selflessness, let us know what acts of kindness you've witnessed in your own community. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories that show the true impact of compassion.